My name is Ase Selah. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. My name is Ase Selah. I am a multidisciplinary artist. Me getting into the art world was a form of expression in the beginning. It was an opportunity for me to escape the precarities in my environment. I found myself walking down the streets with cardboard boxes, scrap wood that I would find in alleyways to sort of express my frustrations based off the conditions that were surrounding me. Essentially, my mom always catered to my creative expression. She would always give me creative tools, sketchbooks, comic books, anime, all these sorts of things to keep me creative. As a child or in my adolescence, I didn't speak much. I would always silo myself off from like the groups and the family. So I found myself sort of just in my head a lot. And my mother wanted to find out how to better connect with me and how to integrate me more effectively with the family. And so this was one of the tools she used to get me to speak and talk. And that was one of the only things I would talk about in extent. And so as time grew, I would find myself continuing to explore these creative opportunities. And it wasn't until I was in I was in high school, and I was with a group of friends, and I saw them in a chess club, and that was something I didn't know, and I'm always trying to find a way to challenge myself. And so I walked into the classroom and I asked if I could join the chess club with the group of guys, and they welcomed me in with open arms. And the teacher at the time, he saw something in us, and he knew the things that we was experiencing in our neighborhoods, and he knew that we were all creatives in our own right, some into fashion, some into painting, sculpture, you name it. And there was an opportunity called CCY at Wesleyan University, more so like a fellowship program. And, you know, it did cost, but he gave us the opportunity to get into the program for free. And that was what changed my life forever. It was an opportunity for me to get exposed to art on a grander scale, and there were people that looked like me that were there, and it was just a new world for me. And I got the opportunity to be exposed to learning how to sew, learning different techniques in oil painting, learning performance. We did theater classes. We learned how to sew and create on a dress form, spoken word. That was my first introduction to learning how to write poetry and creative writing. And so all these sorts of different departments, I got the opportunity to really get exposed into it. And from there, I couldn't get it out of my mind. I would never forget that moment and what it meant and how it felt to be in those spaces where I can actually just be myself authentically without having to, perform or have this hard exterior. Because in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that's an area where, smiling isn't really common. And so you get sort of conditioned to this sort of rough exterior, if you will. And so that was the beginning of me taking art seriously. And from there, I found myself wanting to get into higher education. And so I went to a private institute in New Haven, Connecticut. And from there, I took up graphic design, and I still wasn't getting the fulfillment I needed. And I found myself creating on the streets. So to be quite transparent and open about my journey, I went to Peer College of Art, and I received racism, to say the least. I was in a space where I was working multiple jobs. I was working at Walmart at the time off Dixwell Avenue out in Hamden, Connecticut. And I stopped by Pierre to speak with the staff. I was speaking with the secretary at first, and I was, sort of asking questions about what could I do to get my transcripts. So I requested my transcripts so that way I can just transfer. And from there, there was all these questions about why do I need my transcripts and all these sorts of things. And those questions sort of alarmed me. I'm like, well, it's my right to ask for my transcripts. And so the director at the time was coming down the steps, and he heard the exchange between me and the secretary. And it wasn't like a hostile situation at first. It was very curious. So why do you need them? And I'm like, well, I'm looking to see my transcripts so I can transfer. He came downstairs and he was like, well, what's going on? Why do you need your transcripts? And I'm like, I'm just asking for my transcripts. I don't know why y'all giving me a hard time about getting my transcripts. And so I had my badge on, I had my utility blade on, the box cutter that you use to open up the boxes and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, he must have been in a bad mood. He must have had a bad day. And he was like, you come to my campus with a weapon, from this moment forward, you're expelled and I won't ever want to see you on my campus again. Now, there was always rumors about that school that I didn't really, I'm the type of person I want to see for myself, so I didn't really take heed of some of the things that were happening to the people of color at that institution. But that day sort of gave me doubt, and I went into depression for a while because I thought in my mind at the time that was my ticket to become a full-time artist. And so there was a detour that took place. And so from there, I found myself picking up scrap things off the street, painting in alleyways. I would go down to Broadway, where Yale is located, and I would paint on the streets. I would do live painting. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need a way to be seen and become visible. And so what I did was I just positioned myself near the art department. And when students would come out that were in the Yale program, they would see me painting, and some who were journalists were curious. They would ask me questions. I would get interviews on the street, and then I would see my name in newspapers and things like that. So I saw a strategy happening. And so from there, I knew that I could put myself in a place to become a business or become a businessman. And those were the beginning phases of me taking art seriously. So there was a gap, and I call that moment in my life. If there was a book, I would call those chapters the detour. I stepped away from, I felt like I kind of did turn my back on art. And I ended up coming to Huntsville, Alabama, to get away from the city life, to get away from just the gang culture in New Haven, to get away from just all the chaos that was happening in the city. And I just knew that for myself, there's a thing that people tend to say, you become a product of your environment. And I felt as if I stayed there any longer, I would have became, either a product of it, or I would have been, in a situation where I wouldn't have made it out. And, so I ended up applying to Oakwood because of a friend at the time was going to Oakwood, and this person showed me something that I never seen before in terms of, Oakwood is a Christian university, and there was that's not something that I saw in my environment in terms of youth or young adults, I should say, worshiping. And at that time, I knew that I needed to have a closer relationship with God, and I decided to, I prayed, really prayed for the first time, earnestly, if this is something that you want for me, then make it happen for me. Make it plain, make it clear. And there had been shootouts in the area that I was living in like quite a bit, and there was like classmates that weren't coming back to class because they was in jail or someone had got shot. And so it was just a lot of like trauma happening. And I just knew like I was becoming very frustrated with that environment. So I was praying on it, and I was just talking to God like, man, just give me a sign, give me something that I need, that how I'm gonna receive it, to let me know, like, to get out of here immediately as soon as possible. And I was driving a Ford F-150 at the time, and I was driving down Dixwell Avenue to go to work, to go to Walmart. And it was a beautiful day. It was also like a strange like feeling to it though. It just seemed too peaceful. And I'm just driving, no music, the windows down, the weather's nice, the sun is like glistening, gleaming like almost like a movie. And I stopped at a red light, and I just remember it plain as day. This young guy was running this dude down right in front of my car with a pistol. And he chased him down the street. They stopped in front of my car. He cocked the gun back. I turned my head. I saw an old man at the bus stop with two young kids, a girl and a little boy. He covered their eyes, and I was just like, man, like, I really got to get out of here. And that was that last, like, the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I went straight to work that day. I went straight to the office to talk to personnel about, I was like, yo, today's my last day. I was just like, I can't do this, And they said, well, what's going on? What's wrong? Ask all these questions and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm about to go to school. I hadn't even got a acceptance letter or anything yet. I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go to school. And I told the management that, and they were trying to figure out like how could they, transfer my job down to Huntsville. And long story short, I ended up, leaving that day, not knowing what was gonna happen next. And I went home. I went to bed, later that evening I went to bed, and around like 12 o'clock in the morning, like 12:13 or something like that, like a strange time, I received an email. And typically, like, I wake up easily, but it was weird. Like, there was a ding of a notification that happened. And I woke up out of my sleep, and there was an email from Oakwood University. And it was an acceptance letter, and I was like, whoa, okay, this is happening. And so I said, okay, I'll just figure it out. I sold my Ford F-150 for my tuition, because I didn't have that much saved up working at Walmart, of course. And I ended up selling my car, so that's what I had for tuition. That covered tuition, but I didn't have room on board. I got to Oakwood. I spoke to, it was Dean Vaughn, great guy. And he saw like the struggle in my eyes and everything like that. And he immediately took me under his wing, and he covered my room and board for that first semester. And from there, I started to really try to like regroup and just gather myself together. So in that time frame, I ended up taking up social work. I wanted to serve. I wanted to do something that was going to be socially impactful, something that was community driven. And in that, I found myself, while I was in Oakwood, still I was painting, and I would do an exhibition in the library and things like that. But I ended up landing a job in Department of Human Resources for child abuse and neglect. I was an investigator. I was in the investigations unit for a while. And I would leave work, I would leave out of the office and go home. And I would spend the rest of my night till like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning painting. I would still like create, but it was a way for me to sort of like level out, balance out my emotions, balance out my thoughts. And I remember my supervisor at the time and a few, colleagues that would walk by and they'd be like, Ase, this you? And I'm like, yeah, and over time, my walls would just be filled with paintings. And You know, one day my supervisor was like, what are you doing? Like, why, like, what are you doing here? You know, obviously, this is what you love to do. Why aren't you pursuing it? And that was the question I really needed at the time, because I felt like I had given up. That's what, you know, I felt like I had turned my back on art in terms of like committing to it all the way. So from there, I decided to take it seriously, and I started to try to connect with individuals in Huntsville that were really integrated in the arts, and I found a few mentors. And one of my mentors at the time was speaking to me about just like, what do I want, you know? And I really didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know what I wanted. And he was just basically like, you know, it's either you're gonna continue to be a folk artist. A folk artist is essentially a derogatory term I see it as for individuals who don't have a specific practice, or you don't have the credentials behind your name to state that you are essentially a fine artist in the layman's terms. And so basically he was like, you can either stay this way, which is nothing wrong with that, because you can become whoever you want to be doing this. There's plenty of artists who have been successful and not have a degree. Or you can, because you seem like the type of person that wants the notoriety and wants certain access. And he said, you can apply to some of the top schools in the country, but you need to decide what you're gonna do. I was like, wow, okay. So I spent a little time figuring it out until I got to a point where I couldn't get past the way I was producing my work. And he did tell me, he was like, once you get to this moment, you're gonna know if you're ready for an MFA or not. And surely enough, I was like, okay, I wanna go for my MFA. And so I was looking at a few schools at the time. I was looking at SCAD, I was looking at Yale, I was looking at the School of the Art Institute, Chicago. And so I applied to the School of the Art Institute. I applied to the School of the Art Institute, Chicago, because it was a conceptual model. And I felt as if all the other programs focused more on the technical components. And I wanted something that was going to challenge me to think more critically. And from there, I didn't know if I was going to get in, just be completely honest. And through working at through the social work department and getting a degree in that, I was really interested in like psychology. I was interested in like, how does the brain react to color? How does the brain react to the environment? And the work that I was producing before that got me into SAIC was stemmed on that type of work. And so that was the segue into the practice that I'm doing now, essentially. It sort of shifted completely. However, getting into like higher education, that was the trajectory that actually put me into position in terms of where I am today. I hope I explained that good, but yeah. Yeah.
Explain that well. So
we're here, we're in Chicago. We're in a space where everybody's the best. Everybody's good. It's not just myself, right? I get there, my first studio visit was with the renowned Pamela Sneed, poet, performance artist, just chef's kiss. And you know, she walked into the studio. She's like, looking around, quiet for a bit, asked me to sort of talk about the work, and mid-sentence, just cut it. She's like, you know what, Ase, you're good. Like, I get it, I understand it. Like, but stop doing this. Stop doing this shit. That's maybe what she said. She's like, you don't need to do this no more. We know I see the skill. I know what you're doing, but it just seemed like you're tiptoeing. Like, why are you tiptoeing? And she was like, what are you afraid of? Why are you hiding? Like, I can see there's a lot more that you're trying to push through this type of work. And I was like, whoa, okay, all right. So, She was like, honestly, take everything down off the walls. I said, okay. I want you to, for the next 2 weeks, I want you to do autonomous writing. I want you to write about, when you go to sleep, wake up, you need to have a notepad right by you and start writing down everything you dreamt about. Also, while you're doing that, throughout the day, that same notebook, I want you to write without thinking. You need to be writing out just until you can't, until you start thinking, you stop. I say, okay, since I want to do that for a week, just keep doing it. And at the end of the week, I want you to open that book and I want you to start underlining everything that kept repeating the most. And she said, they said, I want you to make work based on those words that kept appearing the most. And once you do that, I'm gonna come back and we're gonna have a conversation. I said, okay. And little did I know that brought out all the trauma over all those years. There's so many words that kept popping up. And those are things that I was running from. And ultimately, I was running from myself. I was running from my identity. I was running from the fact that I didn't know who I was. I was running from the fact that I didn't know where I came from. So much was there. And they came back to the studio. And from there, they were like, okay, you're ready now. You're ready to produce now. I was just like, whoa, I cried. It was a very emotional but healing moment for me. And that was such a great way to open up the floodgates into my creative direction. From there, I really questioned what did I want to say. I didn't know the language I was trying to build. I didn't know exactly what my authentic voice was. Essentially, the work that got me into the program was me interrogating environment. I was looking at environment and looking at how human behavior interacted with space. And I was making work based off that and using my my graphic design background as a precursor, like advertisement, how, there's certain colors that stimulate the mind to be influenced to purchase things or to eat or to feel a certain way. And I was using that in my paintings to sort of like subjugate those emotions. And so from that moment, I found myself going back home. I went back to Connecticut. I went back to the areas where, I was almost robbed. I went back to the areas where some people had passed away. I went back to the areas in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I felt very uncomfortable and very unsafe, and homes that I used to live in, some were boarded up, some didn't exist anymore. Even I took it further by going back down south, because I was born in Hayhara, Georgia, actually. I spent a lot of my adolescence in Valdosta, Georgia. And so from there was a lot of things happening in the rural South. Jasper, Florida, I would go down and spend time with my great aunt and my cousins there. And so I would go back and just revisit those moments, revisit those like memorable times where I felt safe and felt connected. Even though like the conditions weren't the best, community and joy was always there. And I would go to the elders in the family and go through their scrapbooks, going through the family albums. And I found myself looking at the Polaroid pictures. And in that, I was really looking at the gaze. I was looking at the eyes. I was looking at the body postures, who looked comfortable, who looked like they weren't comfortable. I was